Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Pastor in Training Podcast, the show where we explore faith, theology, and what it looks like to follow Jesus in a complicated world. I'm your host, Jeffrey White, and whether you're a lifelong believer, somewhere in the middle of deconstructing your faith, or simply curious about Jesus, I'm really glad you're here. Today's guest is someone whose work centers around intentional living, belonging, creativity, and what it means to tell the truth with compassion. Reverend Sam Houser is a writer, artist, and minister whose work challenges us to think differently about faith, community, justice, and the stories we tell ourselves. Through books, poetry, and ministry, Sam invites people to move beyond simply surviving toward living with deeper purpose and authenticity. Sam, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, thanks for having me on. It's so good to have this conversation with you.
Right on. It's been a fun day for me so far. So I want to start with your Facebook bio because I absolutely love it.
Okay.
I try to live less out of habit and more out of intent. That's simple, but it's incredibly profound. What does that actually look like in your everyday life?
Yeah, I would say so. First, I think it really matters. Like, we as human beings are habitual creatures, right? We tend to do the same things that bring us joy, comfort, or for whatever reason, like fire off the neurons that make us keep doing those things. And so it really has been an important thing in my world to like not just live like that, not just to be a creature of habit, but to really question, like, why am I doing these things? What does this look like in my holistic view of self, and also self invested in the world? And so like on a day-to-day basis, that means like I wake up, yes, I make coffee like I do every morning, but then I'll sit with my cup of coffee and start to question, like, what do I want my day to look like? How do I want things to unfold, so that there's some intention behind what comes next, rather than just coffee, work, whatever, you might put on the laundry list of things that you do in a habitual sort of setting.
Right, I got you. So one thing I love hearing is the story behind the person. Before people knew you as an author or minister, who is Sam Houser, and what experiences shaped the person that you've become?
Oh, dang, that's a deep question.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we do deep questions here on the Pastor in Training podcast. We're trying to get deeper into being and being present. So
I get that.
yeah.
I get that. I love it. So in a nutshell, I would say before people knew me as a pastor, I was just a kid. The youngest of 5 kids, actually. I lived in a very small town in the middle of nowhere, Iowa. Played all the sports, did all the extracurricular, theater, show choir, all the things that could have been on my list of things to do in a small town. I was making sure that I was doing them just because we lived in the country. And so any chance I had to like go be with people, I would take, which I think also is what has pushed me into the service of ministries, to continue to be around people and to care about people. Yeah, super creative. I would say if you ask people from my younger days, pre-pastoring, I was a super creative, but also like super outgoing, almost tomboy-esque kiddo. My siblings might say that I was the tag-along because I always wanted to be with them when they were hanging out with their friends. Yeah, kind of hard question to answer, mostly, Jeffrey, because I started in ministry at the age of like 20. So pre-20s, I literally was just some random small town kid.
Right on. No, I get that. We have a very similar experience growing up because I was the youngest of 4 in a very small town in North Texas. So
yep.
And it really shaped who I am because of the bullying and everything that I went through as a kid. Sure. It made a huge impact on how I see others and see the world around me, because when I see people being mistreated, it irritates me to no end.
Yeah.
And especially in this current political climate, it's one of those things where I'm not a fighter, but I want to go fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it just makes me angry to see the way that people are being treated right now.
Well, I'm glad you brought the fact up that we kind of can relate as being the youngest, because I don't put too much stock into family order when it's like a concept, but I do think being the youngest, at least for myself and my own experience, shaped that same sense of like caring for the underdog, because as the youngest of so many siblings, I always was the underdog, like just by natural selection. So definitely shaped my worldview. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So many of our listeners have experienced shifts in their theology. Some are deconstructing, some are reconstructing. Some are simply just asking better questions than they used to. How has your understanding of God changed over the years?
Oh, yeah. So I would have been confirmation age, around 13 or 14 years old, when I was in church, going to church full time. And we had, in the small town that I just talked about, we had our very first female preacher. And I remember at that age of 13 going through confirmation and learning from this female pastor, who I didn't even know women could be pastors at the time, that there's this like whole other world of theological understanding that revolves around womanism, and that whole shift out of the patriarchal understanding of theology. And at that age, I really didn't understand how big of a deal it was for me to be learning about it. And I very much was like, what do you mean we have to change the words to all of the Christmas hymns we sing? This is stupid. But that was the beginning for me of the deconstruction of like, oh, I don't have to just believe everything that an adult tells me I should believe when it comes to church or the Bible or any kind of Christian understanding. I really do get to ask questions and wonder, like, why is it that we do these certain rituals, or why do we say these specific words, rather than having a more expansive understanding of some of this stuff. So even as like a very beginning teenager, I was already sort of in that modality of reframing things and relearning, kind of tearing down old belief systems that I didn't even know I had. Right at 13, I'm lucky if I know how to cut a straight line in a piece of paper, let alone like deconstruct all my theological understandings. But that was the beginning of the deconstruction. And then from there, I constantly was just more and more curious about what else do I believe that I don't even know I believe, so that I can start questioning the belief. And when I remember specifically when I was 21 and in seminary, I had a group of fellow seminarians who were just like beside themselves. They were all very much older than me. I was one of the youngest students there. But they were beside themselves because they're like, there's so much deconstruction happening and nobody's telling us how to like rebuild our understanding of the Bible or church or anything.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there thinking like, what a privilege I have to have already started that process at such an early age, that I can sit in the discomfort of trying to tear down beliefs that really are like steadfast in terms of spirituality and understanding self, as well as self in relationship to the world around me. So for all your listeners out there who are in the process of deconstruction, I would just say, like, hold on, have faith. Things will start to make sense, even if it means that it makes less sense than it used to, because there's no black and white answers when it comes to understanding. It really is just that acknowledgement of expansiveness. So yeah.
Right on. Yeah, that's kind of, so my full deconstruction started in my 30s, early 30s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But growing up, I grew up in a fundamental Baptist church that taught hellfire and brimstone every Sunday.
Yeah.
And even though I believed I was saved, I still thought I was going to hell for a multitude of reasons, because that's what they taught us.
Yeah.
And then as I progressed and got older, I got into less dogmatic churches. And as I've gotten older, I've continued to grow. But there was a good 15 years where I was out of the church altogether, and I wanted nothing to do with God after my parents passed.
Yeah. And that's so normal. That's like such a typical story. Not to say that your story is not worth hearing, because it actually matters more, because it is such a typical narrative.
Yeah. And then, like, as I've gotten older, can I ask you a question? What denomination are you in?
Oh yeah, sure. I am ordained in the United Church of Christ, so
Okay, cool.
pretty progressive. But I would say like the sort of understanding of the churches as individual entities, not as progressive.
No,
Like
I
when you
get
get
that.
into specific places. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm Disciples of Christ, so we're sister denominations.
yeah, right on.
So as I've gotten older, I've gotten into theologically more accepting and welcoming of questions, and that's pretty much how I found my home at the church I'm at now in Denton,
Nice.
Texas. And one of the things I love is that my questions they're not, oh, you need to have faith and just believe. And the answers I get back are, well, that's interesting. Let's talk about it. Let's explore it. Let's see.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we look at the original languages and go, oh, well, that means something completely different than what I've been taught the word means. For example, repentance. Repentance has a negative connotation to it. The word metanoia that's translated into repentance does not have a negative connotation to it.
No,
It is simply to change your mind.
Yeah,
And,
just a restructuring.
Yeah. And when I learned that, as I was going through, I was in the Anglican church for a little bit, and I was surprised at how open and questioning they were. And like, it really it led me deeper into my faith, even though I was going through deconstruction. I'm like, okay, my questions aren't stupid. They're not a sign that I don't have faith or I don't believe. They're really just a sign that I'm trying to figure out who God is for myself. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. But one of the things we need to remember, and I've learned this through my time in ministry, is that just because I don't agree with somebody's theology or that theology doesn't speak to me doesn't mean it doesn't speak to someone. And it doesn't mean they're not having an experience with God just because I think it's harmful theology.
Right.
And like I say, every generation has to find God for themselves. Like my dad's religion doesn't work for me. And my religion probably wouldn't work for my dad. My dad would think I've gone off the deep end a little bit, but I still believe that he would, love me and support me regardless of that.
Sure.
So it's when you find that community where you're allowed to ask your questions, and really that's when you start to grow and understand God for yourself. And that has been huge in my journey.
Yeah.
Great. So next question. Was there a defining moment where everything started to look different for you?
Oh my gosh. Many, so many defining moments. Goodness. So I mentioned a little bit about, when I was in confirmation, having a female pastor who kind of opened my eyes to like knowing that curiosity wasn't doubt. Curiosity was actually faith building. And then I mentioned also the moment in seminary where I've literally felt so privileged to have already started the deconstruction work without knowing that's what it was. But I think along the way of my track of ministry, so I've been in ministry for a little over 20 years in total, ordained ministry for just under 20 years. But there've been so many moments that have shifted my perspective and my understanding that that would be a whole another book in and of itself to say, here's what you should look out for, maybe. It's interesting when you ask the question, though, because my mind immediately jumps to when I took a job at a sort of conference level. So in the United Church of Christ, we have the local congregations, then we have associations where there's maybe anywhere from like 5 to 13-ish churches that kind of conglomerate geographically with one another. And then we have conferences. And I took a job at the conference level. I had oversight over hundreds of churches and thousands of Christian members. And I think that really shifted my understanding of belief and curiosity, because in my world, it had been so small and contained, right? I grew up in a small town. I served a church for 10 years in a small town. And then all of a sudden, I am hearing experiences and learning about how urban ministry works and how, big family sized churches function. And so then I really did have to grapple with the fact that like, I'm constantly learning. I never know everything ever. And it was really humbling to say, oh, I still have so much more work to be doing when it comes to deconstruction, because my deconstruction and rebuilding of faith, and even knowing like curiosity is the key for me in terms of rebuilding my faith. It came with limits based on my experience of small town living and small town service. So defining moment in terms of shifting in theology and understanding and self even was definitely when I started opening the doors to a multitude of experiences when it comes to Christianity in general.
Right on. That's cool. I think one of the healthiest things we can do as Christians is admit that growth means changing our minds.
Yeah.
And that actually brings me to my next question. What's one belief you held with confidence that you no longer believe?
Oh, my God.
Can you narrow it down to one?
I know. That's why I was like, oh, gosh, one solid belief. I mean, it goes back to my very first story of like, why do we have to change the words in the hymns that we sing, right? Like I had a core belief that rituals were like the end all be all of Christian practice. So even the ritual of worship where you sing hymns and the words in those hymns matter, my core belief was like, those words are close to biblical, right? Like those hymns are close to biblical. So it was really, and now that I'm thinking about it, even like I look back at when I was so staunch, we would go Christmas caroling as a youth group, and our minister at the time and the adults were singing the new revised language that we had in our hymnal, and I refused. I was very much the protester of the group, screaming out like, no, we're going to sing Lord Jesus or his holy name, or whatever the words might be within the hymn context. And so now when I look at hymnals, I'm very much aware like these are words for a certain group of people for a certain era in time.
Yes.
And yes, they matter. They 100% still matter. They speak to someone's heart. They are worthy of being sung as loud as anyone might sing them. And also like, they don't have to be my words. They don't have to be my heart holding sort of understanding. And so I would say, that a moment would be really just the language that we use in our hymnals, and understanding that rituals, although they have meaning, they're just the outward sign of the grace that we're trying to like feel in ourselves. And so they can shift and change, and that's good and normal and natural. So similar to what you were naming about, your dad's religion not being for you and your religion maybe not being something that he would have grabbed onto or believed in. I would say that's kind of where I'm landing as well. And specifically when I think about like the ritual of worship and singing hymns in worship, that'd be probably the most staunch belief that I held on to for quite a long time. And even still, I'll catch myself singing like Christian pop music or whatnot that has just abhorrent messaging, in my opinion. But like,
but it's so good.
It was
like
what I needed at the time when I first learned it, right? And so it's a hard going back to like living out of intent rather than habit. Like that's a hard habit for me to let go of, because music speaks to my soul in ways that not much else can. And so those songs from my early sort of learning about religion and self have shaped me in ways that I can't actually let go of.
Right.
And my thought process behind them definitely has shifted to say those songs were for me at a time and no longer are, but they still matter.
Right. I want to circle back to something you said on your previous answer to the last question.
Yeah.
You said something to the effect that you're never going to have it all figured out as far as theology and all that. And that was when I chose the name Pastor in Training. That was really my thought process, is that I'm never going to have all of Christian theology or anything figured out. I'm constantly in training. I'm constantly learning, and I'm constantly learning as an under shepherd to Christ. You know what I mean? Like, we're never going to have this all figured out. And anybody that thinks they do is not being honest with themselves.
Yeah.
Or they've traded certainty for honesty.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that, like, for me, I remember my pastor at the time asking, he goes, "So why pastor in training?" And I told him that story. He goes, "Yeah, that's a pretty good answer. I like that." And then you talked about music and the older music. Like, one of the things I find is that when I'm going through a hard time or something, and especially when it's something like inside that's just eating me up, I find that those old hymns that I grew up singing and listening to still help me, because one of the songs I love was one of my mom's favorite, and it was Beulah Land. And that it's a beautiful hymn. In the Garden's another one.
Yep.
I've started doing what I call next gen remixes, where I'm taking those words and those tunes and rewriting them for the next generation to make them more relevant language to now and today, versus written for an era that no longer exists.
Right. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Have you, I don't mean to derail the conversation at all, but have you heard of the Convergence Music Project?
I have heard of Convergence. I haven't heard of the music project, but I am familiar with the organization.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to say, I'll hook you in if you'd like, because
absolutely.
There's a couple musicians. Richard Bruxford Culligan is the one that comes to the top of my mind, who is outstanding when it comes to writing music that has meaningful lyrics for today, but still holds on to that sort of like folky, hymnal-ish-esque ministerial style, I guess. I'd totally be willing to hook you into those folks.
Right on. That's awesome. Yeah. The first one I did, it's the only one I've done so far, but it was Blessed Assurance.
Oh, nice.
And I wrote it to a new tune. I kept the lyrics, but I wrote a new tune to it.
Oh, cool.
And it makes it sound completely different. It's not the same, Blessed Assurance, it's got a different tune to it. And to me, I love it. Like, it's really cool to watch something come to life like that when you're doing it. And so that's one of my many projects that I have going. Trust me, I've got plenty.
That is awesome.
All right. So one of the things that seems to weave through your work is belonging. Why do you think belonging is such a deeply spiritual need?
Well, I think, so you kind of spoke to this when you were talking about your own upbringing, right? Like, there's this undercurrent, I think, not just in church world, but in society, of like, here's how you can be enough, but also you're never gonna be enough. Mm-hmm. And so you see that in like our marketing ploys that come across on any streaming service, right? Like, oh, you have wrinkles, you shouldn't have wrinkles. Also, you're probably always going to have wrinkles, but buy this product, right? Or in churches where it's like, well, if you just do X, Y, and Z to be quote unquote good enough, then you'll get into heaven, but also you're never going to get into heaven or be good enough because of the like fall of man. And so there's these societal undercurrents that are constantly telling us we're not enough, we're never going to be enough. And because of that, I feel like that creates this innate desire to belong. And, you talk about like your own childhood, being bullied and having people be mean to you. And that happens all the time because people don't feel good enough. And so it's like, just this, for me, I feel like any ways that I can show up for another human being and help them understand that they actually have a place at the table, I'm going to do that. Yeah. I remember my mentor. So in our church, we had confirmation in particular, we had mentors going through church. And when I started writing papers to get accepted into seminaries, I asked her to be a reference for me. And one of the things that she put in my reference, which I love it so much, I use it now when I write references if it fits, but was like, Sam was always the kid who like would pull out a pack of gum, have a piece, and then offer the piece of gum to everybody else, because that was like cool kid token, right? Like if you had gum, you were the cool kid. And so so I just relate that to say, really, like, any small way that I can help somebody feel like they're a part of what I'm doing or where we are, I'm going to take that step because I think everyone deserves to feel like they're a part.
Amen. That brings me to one thing that happened to me. I was at youth camp about a month ago, and one of the nights I was playing my guitar through communion, and when I got up to get communion, there was no bread left. So I just walked to the back, and I was like, okay, no big deal. One of the kids got up, he walked back to the back and asked one of the counselors for a goldfish. And then he went and got the cup of grape juice and brought it to me so I could have communion. And it broke me in the best possible way ever. Like I was standing there trying to not to cry in front of the kid. And like as soon as he turned around, like I broke. And the person I went to that gave me a ride to camp, she comes over and she was my co-counselor for the week with our small group. And she just puts her arm around my shoulder and she goes, "That's why we do this shit."
Right?
And I was like, yeah.
It's those moments where you realize like, oh, somebody has seen me in ways that they don't even, I mean, to that kid, he's probably just like, yeah, I'll make sure everyone gets a cracker, right?
That was literally what he told me.
But for you, it's like, oh, you saw that I had a need and you helped meet it. Whatever that need is, right? It's like so powerful.
Yeah. And it, like I said, it broke me in the best way possible. Like that whole week was just an incredible experience for me.
Heck yeah.
Follow-up question. Do you think the church sometimes confuses belonging with agreement?
Oh, 100%. Yes. And I think too, so in the United Church of Christ, we have a sort of certification process of becoming what's known as open and affirming. And I've done work to try to coach churches through the process by which to become open and affirming. And essentially, like one of the most important sort of understandings that I ask churches to hold on to is to say, like, it's one thing to be welcoming to people, right? You can welcome folks into your space, and that's fine and good, and you should. But to be affirming of who they are as a human being, totally different ballgame. And so, like when you're talking about churches sort of missing the mark in terms of belonging and agreeing, it's sort of like all people should be welcome in a space, in my opinion. You don't necessarily need to welcome all behaviors in those spaces because obviously there are harmful behaviors that shouldn't be welcomed, but like the people themselves, whether they've engaged in any kind of behavior that you might look at and think that's wrong or bad or not good, the people themselves as freaking children of God should belong to the space. Yes. So yeah, I totally think oftentimes churches just is a broad brushstroke, right? We'll say, yeah, everyone's welcome here. Everyone belongs here. But the truth is like only if they agree with what we say is true or right. So yeah, I missed the mark, I feel like, on a lot of occasions.
Yeah, one of the things I've seen personally throughout my time in ministry is, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ community, which includes myself, if they know that about you in certain churches, you're allowed to be there, but you're not allowed to serve. You're not allowed to be part of the community, really. You're there because, hey, maybe you'll give us some money. Right. And I've personally seen a church that had a spectacular worship band, and their drummer left, and he recommended that one of his friends come play. Well, she showed up, and she was a trans woman, and she rocked. Like, she played the drums, freaking rocked and crushed it. Everybody was excited about it.
Yeah.
Then they found out that she was trans. And the next week she came back and they asked her to leave.
Oh, man.
And I don't think they realize how much damage that does. Like, you may not agree with what they are, with who they are, or what they believe about themselves, but it's not your place as a minister to go and tell them they're not allowed to worship.
Yeah.
And that, to me, like, that was one of the final breaking points for me at that church was I'm not going to be a part of a church that treats people like that. Yeah. I simply won't. Yep. And if we can't treat people with love and dignity the way that Christ showed us to, then we're not a church. We're a country club with a bitchin' rock band.
Right.
And
Yes.
to be honest, I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
I want to be a part of a community. Like if you see over here on that side, it says the Pit Collective. That
Yep.
is my church plant that I'm working on, and it is literally open to everybody. There are no qualifications or anything required. You show up, you're going to be loved, you're going to be treated with dignity, respect, and we see you for who you are,
Yeah.
not what the rest of the world sees you as. We see you as a child of God. You have a spot at the table.
Yep.
And our mission is simply to feed people and to be more present than we have been in our lives, like to be more present with God, with ourselves, and with our community.
Nice.
And that's the biggest thing that we're going to do. Like our ministry is literally to feed people. It's going to be a $0 menu restaurant / event venue that you can come in, no matter of your ability to pay or not, you're going to get something to eat that day.
Yep.
You're going to, and I'm like, this is something that I'm really excited about. Because I'm in the process of building my launch team and getting ready to propel this out into Austin here in Texas.
Fantastic ministry. That's awesome. Nice.
Thank you. That is one of my biggest. It's been a goal for about 5 years to do this, and I felt like God, when He called me back in 2020, was like, "Hey, I want you to start a church," and I was like, "That's cool and all, but I have no idea how to do that."
Right.
So if you want me to do it, you're going to have to give me some training. And lo and behold, I started undergrad that year in church leadership. And then in 2024, my pastor's like, "Hey, why don't you apply to Austin Seminary?" Because that's where she went. And I was like, "Because I didn't finish my undergrad and I don't know if they'd take me." She goes, "Just apply."
Yep.
And because I had a mental breakdown in 22 due to a bad church plant experience in Missouri, in which my bishop had forged all of his documents and they didn't vet him.
Oh, yeah. No.
Oh, yeah. I can send you a link to the Kansas City Star article about him later. It was bad. Yeah. Wow. Like this dude had a horrible record of abuse and everything else, and it just finally culminated in December of 23. And like that did a lot of damage to me personally, because part of my journey is dealing with depression, and my call came during a failed suicide attempt.
Wow.
And God told me don't do it while I was standing there holding the pills. Like I heard the audible voice of God speak to me.
Oh, dang.
And I was the only person in my house, so I can't say it was anybody else.
Right.
But we had a long conversation with a disembodied voice that told me, "Hey, I've got work for you to do. I've got a purpose for your life, but I need you to trust me."
Yep.
And at that point, that was the only thing I hadn't tried. So I was like, "You know what? Let's try it." I said, I'll trust you. I'll follow you. But I need you to be with me. And he said, I'll be with you every step of the way.
And I'm glad you chose to trust. That's awesome.
Right. Thank you. So let's switch over to creativity and God. You're both an artist and a writer. I've always believed creativity reflects something about the image of God within us. How do you see creativity connecting with spirituality?
Yeah, I mean, I think the intersections are vast. They're numerous. When I think about spirituality, I think about it. So like as a minister, part of the work is being creative in terms of creating an environment like what we just talked about, where people feel like they belong. And that takes not only a spiritual discipline to understand, like I'm trying to get my head wrapped around a bigger thing than just me, but also it takes a creative person to really step into the role to say, okay, well, I'm creating this event, this space, whether it's weekly or monthly or daily even. And so what does that look like? So for me, in my creative practices, so that's like the professional side being creative, right? My professional spirituality being also creative. When I start to actually do like creative things just for self, it it can only be, for me at least, thought of as a spiritual practice, because it's not it's not like me telling my brain to think of something awesome to put on paper or to create out of glass. It's like some bigger, higher power saying, not in an audible voice like what you've experienced, but at least like giving me the inspiration to put words on a page, or to put glass in a certain stylistic arrangement, or to put watercolor on the paper in a certain kind of way, right? Like that, they're so intertwined and interchangeable in my mind. Like creativeness and spirituality are essentially the same thing, or at least maybe flip side to the same coin, I guess, right? And I think sometimes we miss the mark, especially now in terms of church and how many people experience church, is that folks will go to church as a more like, I don't know, almost lecture-based, educational, auditory, like they just want to sit and experience church, but they don't actually want to participate, which is why I find myself more and more in the last decade or so reminding people, like, you are a living person who gets to practice and participate in the services that you attend, whether they be worship services in a sort of traditional church space, whether they be community meals that you're helping to prepare, serve, or even just enjoy, whether that be that you're like forest bathing with a group of friends, right? Like all of that is an embodied experience of creation. And so like, it's spiritual in and of itself to just enjoy whatever the act might be when we talk about like spiritual connection to creativity. So for me, they're so interchangeable in terms of understanding that I'm constantly reminding folks, remember, this is an embodied practice. Spirituality in and of itself is an embodied practice. And that means that you as a human being are a creative part of whatever the spirituality vessel might be, right?
Yeah, amen. Right on. Have you read the book Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh?
Oh, I don't know that I have.
Oh man, it is.
I'm making a note right now.
It is so good. My brother actually sent me the whole book, and there's 3 books. So basically, this guy sits down to write, and he's asking God his questions, and the book becomes his conversations with God. Nice. And it is so good. I've read it, I've listened to the Audible book, and I love that the Audible book uses both a male and female voice for God.
Oh, that's freaking awesome.
Really cool.
Nice.
And it's on Audible. I'm pretty sure I think I listened to it on Scribe before it became a different app and just sucks now. But Scribe was great when it first started, and then when it transitioned to Everand, it kind of just started getting worse and worse. And now the subscription model is not worth it. Before, you could download literally everything. It was like Kindle and Audible had a super baby and then put it on steroids.
And then they got bought out by greedy.
Yes. Yeah. Because I had so many books that I listened to, and a lot of the Tim Jennings, I don't know if you're familiar with any of his work.
Yeah, I know.
I listened to the God-Shaped Brain, the God-Shaped Heart.
Yep.
I love his work. He's another person that I'd love to have on the show. But that's a different story. So the reason I bring up Conversations with God, does writing become prayer for you?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that I've ever looked at it like that, but I will say, so my second book is a book of poetry, and it's an invitation really for the readers to become writers as well. So if your definition of prayer is like conversation with God, right? Or the divine, or whatever you want to call the human you're having or the entity you're having a conversation with, then I would say, yeah, writing definitely feels like or can become prayer pretty quickly. Because similar to my understanding of faith, like I don't feel like I will ever have faith. I'm constantly growing in my faith. I don't think any of my writing is ever like just words set in stone. It's always very much a conversation of growth when I'm putting words to the page. So yeah, I feel like could definitely be understood as prayer, for sure.
Yeah, right on. One of your books is titled No Longer Keeping the Peace. The title alone raises questions. What's the difference between becoming a peacemaker and simply keeping the peace?
Yeah, I would say for a lot of people, keeping the peace means staying silent when there is something wrong or there is harmful behavior happening. And so becoming a peacemaker is really somebody who's willing to do the holy work of agitation and like naming truths that maybe are hard to name or that we don't want to name because they're uncomfortable. And that's how you get to a place of actually creating peaceful settings within yourself as well as externally. Really allowing you to be fully who you are and naming your lived experience within an organization in particular. This book is about church harm and church violence, but I think it extends to literally every aspect of life. If you want to be a peacekeeper, then you tend to be more of a people pleaser, right? You do what other people want, or you assume roles that are put upon you by society. Whereas being a peacemaker, you really live fully and authentically as yourself and be an adult and have adult conversations that maybe are uncomfortable or challenging, but you still have them because that's how you create the peace. So yeah, it's not an easy read. I will say that book was not an easy write either. There's a lot of research done in regard to church harm and how folks in all areas of our society just kind of allow harm to happen and just ignore it. And so the book itself really is an invitation, not for any survivor of church harm, but really for churches in general, any groups within churches, any organization that sort of partners with churches, to look at the policies that they're making, to look at the ways in which they interact with the people that they're supposedly serving, and really adjust accordingly.
Right on. I had a follow-up question, but I think you answered it. When is disruption actually faithful? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we kind of talked about it when we were naming like the upbringings that we both share in terms of underdogs and really understanding like creating space where folks feel like they belong is sort of the pinnacle of what we're offering and trying to sort of grow into as ministers. But I think like the disruption is holy and faithful when it's looking at folks who are maybe not ever looked at ever as humans and asking the question of like, what are we doing if not treating these people as if they were human, because they are. And that could be a wide variety of categories. When I say these people, I mean literally any category of human beings who've been overlooked or even really disenfranchised in any kind of way. And to wonder, like, what are we doing if not serving the people of God, right? Yeah. And that means all the people of God, not just the people of God who agree with what I'm saying or look like how I look or act how I act, right? Like all the people of God.
Right. Are you familiar with Marion Barber?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not Marion Barber. Is it William Barber?
William Barber. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Marion's his middle name. I absolutely love that guy. Like my pastor introduced me to him a few years ago and I consumed everything I could find on him. Nice. Like I've listened to his books. I absolutely love the way that he approaches being a peacemaker. Yep. And it's somebody that I try to emulate because I kind of feel like God gave me the voice to do the same thing and the backbone to do it. So nice. It's one of those things I'm still coming into and working on, but I feel like over the next maybe 20 years, we'll see a lot more of that coming out of me. So
that is exciting.
Yeah. Like it's scary because I feel called to politics and I absolutely hate politics. Like I despise politics. And it's hard not to call out the corruption and the lies and the hurt that they're causing and just to sit here and argue. Like I don't like to argue with people. Like if you want to be stuck in your ways and you're not interested in having a conversation or learning or growing, I'm not going to waste my time because I'm not going to bang my head on a brick wall for no reason. If there's a positive outcome, like you might learn something, then yeah, I'll sit there and argue with you or have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to waste my time on somebody that just doesn't want to do research, doesn't want to believe anything other than what comes out of a certain side of a political spectrum. Yeah. And like, I'm definitely not right leaning. I can tell you that. So like I said, right now it's hard because I made a video about Ken Paxton the other day. Okay. And it's like, why should we vote for you in Texas? You've done nothing to help the people of Texas. You've been corrupt the entire time. You got impeached by your own party. Why should we vote for you?
Right.
And the arguments are, oh, he's done so much, and the opposition is James Tallarico. I'm sorry, if you've never listened to James Tallarico speak, I hear God in that man. Like, yep. I hear him echoing the words of Christ and emulating that in his life.
Yep, he's living it. Yeah.
People want to attack me because they're like, oh, well, you go to the same seminary, so you just like him. No, I like him because of who he is and what he stands for.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to listen to what he actually says and you're just going to regurgitate Fox News and OAN, you're never going to learn anything. Like, your PhD from Fox News isn't going to serve you well with me. I'm just telling you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that usually causes them to resort to personal attacks. Like, I've been called lard ass and fatso, and I'm just like, oh, well, I've lost 150 pounds. Clearly, this is reversible. Stupidity's not. So
awesome.
Yeah, like I don't like to play games with people. I'm gonna be honest with you, and if you don't like it, just keep on scrolling. It's right. 2026.
Yep, you don't need to troll.
Yeah,
you can scroll.
Hang out and troll. Just go.
Yeah,
it's not gonna hurt my feelings.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Like I said, I got that holy agitator in me, I think.
Nice.
When you look at the American church, what gives you hope?
Oh, shit. I think, so the thing that gives me the most hope is understanding that for the most part, and I've worked with thousands of churches and church members across the country, for the most part, the people that I experience in the American church are trying to do their best in terms of what is right and good, not only for them, but for the people they know and love, right? And that doesn't always turn out well in the end. And it also opens the door for a lot of people to step in and abuse the sort of naivete that comes with that do good model. But because what I see and hear sort of overall is that people want what is good and right for them and for the people that they love and care for, that's where the hope lies, is that if we can expand folks' understanding of the people, right, that they love and care for, then I think all will be well. And I hold on to the hope that people will continuously just grow and learn over who their communities are, mm-hmm. and continue to want to serve their communities, knowing that that's the goal, as like service, right?
Yeah.
Service in terms of love and care.
Yeah.
And so I try to remember, especially in the deep pits of despair, when I think, why am I even doing this work? Try to remember, most people at their core are good, and they want what's good for the people that they know and love. They just don't know and love maybe as many people as I know and love. And so, like, there's always the hope that can just be expanded.
That's good. I'm going to take that with me. Because I tend to, as I said earlier, I shoot people away.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So many people have felt rejected by church communities, and some have walked away completely. Others are still trying to figure out if there's room for them. What do you want someone like that to hear today?
Yeah. So, okay. So the first book that you mentioned, the No Longer Keeping the Peace book, is a book all about reconciliation. And a lot of times we get that word wrong. You talk about like misinterpretations earlier, right? And I think when people hear the word reconciliation, they think, well, it just means like we're making up or we're forgiving and then forgetting about whatever had happened to cause real pain. And so for the folks that you're talking about, I would hope that they take away today that reconciliation is really slow work that makes room for truth to be spoken out loud so that then trust has a chance to kind of grow again. And that's really, really hard work, because when you've been hurt by the church in particular, you know, spiritual wounds are sometimes the deepest wounds because it is who we understand ourselves to be when we're spiritual beings. And so it breaks everything. The wound itself breaks so deeply. And so then you lose all of the trust that you might have in an institution that at one point really probably held you up in ways that felt really solid. And so it's really, really hard to rebuild that trust. But I think if people walk away from this episode and only understand that reconciliation is not just forgiving and forgetting, it's making room for the truth to be spoken so that trust can be rebuilt.
Right.
That's key.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Lightning round it is.
All right. Let's have a little fun with this. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Morning person or night owl?
Both. Sleep. What is this? I don't know.
Right. Favorite book besides the Bible?
Oh, dude, You Are the Medicine. Frost is the last name of the author, but the book itself is called You Are the Medicine, and it's amazing.
Right on. Favorite theologian?
Myself, currently. No. Dude. So I'm really into the Psalms currently, and so my favorite theologian is a modern day theologian. His name, I mentioned him earlier with Convergence Music Project. It's Richard Bruxford Culligan, 100%.
Okay. Favorite poet besides yourself?
Oh, there's too many. Wendell Berry, I guess. I mean, we'll go, yeah.
Shea Silverstein? Is
Does that count?
It was considered poetry when I was a kid. I don't know, I guess.
I love those books.
One spiritual practice that you couldn't live without?
Grounding.
One misconception people have about you?
Oh, I don't know that there are many. I try to live pretty transparently. So.
Right on. And finally, what's bringing you joy right now? Besides this podcast episode.
Yeah, I was going to say, hanging out with you for the afternoons bring me tons of joy. What's bringing me joy right now in this season of life is all of the intentional traveling I do with my kiddos. We are trying to make it to all 50 states before the last one graduates, which is like 4 years. And so I am such a planner. I love travel and I love to plan. So like the joy of sitting down with a notebook and a map, and it's so much joy.
Nice. That's awesome. All right. Well, Sam, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I really appreciate your willingness to share your story and your perspective. Before we go, where can people connect with you, and where can they find your books and follow your work?
Yeah, so connect with me. I'm most active on Instagram and Facebook. You can look up Sam Houser. I'm sure you're going to find 3 or 4 of them, but just look for my beautiful face. Also have a Substack folks can subscribe to if they would like. Again, it's under Sam Houser. And my books, all 3 of them, are at any major retailer. You can go onto Amazon.com if you're an Amazon person. If you'd rather shop like locally or thrifty, there's a website called thriftbooks.com. Just put in my name. All 3 of them should come up.
Right on. I'm pretty sure I found connected with you on Facebook. So
I'm pretty sure too. Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. If today's conversation encouraged you, challenged you, or made you think a little differently, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. You can also follow the Pastor in Training wherever you get your podcasts and stay connected on social media for future episodes. As always, keep asking questions, keep seeking truth, keep loving people well, and remember, you don't have to have everything figured out to faithfully follow Jesus. Let's go out and leave it better than we found it. We'll see you next time. Jeff out. And recording.